Greetings, fellow explorers, and welcome to the third episode of Geekoscopy 101. It's a podcast show that explores the nexus between science, story, wonder, and philosophy with me, your host, Giannis, aka Dr. Kisson, aka the artist formerly known as The Tunes before they were banned. And today we are discovering the science of teaching with Dr. Francois Naude, the super teacher at Phoenix Education Engineers. How are you doing, Francois?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, it's really exciting to have you. And we were just chatting before about how we kind of connected online 3-4 years ago, and we never ended up doing anything until now. It took COVID-19 to get us together.
And just for that reason alone, I'm happy with lockdown. It's actually brought so many people together. It gave us the opportunity to really connect with the people that we've met online. I've got so many friends now that's like 2D friends because I only see them on a screen. But I can't wait until we get out of this damn lockdown so we can start meeting each other in 3D again.
So we can see people, in 3D. Interesting take. And I kind of completely agree. There's pros and cons to it. Obviously, some of the cons are really severe. But I think in terms of, especially in South Africa, just the general public understanding the idea of, the internet and communication online and how, this technology and infrastructure needs to improve so that everybody can, benefit from it. I'm hoping that's what South Africa takes away from it, and we get better internet infrastructure and, I'm sure in your situation, you would like, kids to get better access to resources that allow them to do stuff like this.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the main things that's been exposed, and it was there for. I mean, the inequalities in our country is rife. We know our own history, but what lockdown has shown us is the extent to which there are these inequalities in our country. We are going to get into education soon enough in our discussion, but just from education point of view, we saw that some schools could continue basically uninterrupted. They basically took a day or two just to sort out their structures and went on with schooling uninterrupted. But then some of our kids now have had 83 days without, most likely more, let's say about almost 80 days worth of no education whatsoever because they couldn't get access to their teachers.
Yeah, it's rough. And we're going to go deeper into that. But first, actually, why don't you let our fellow explorers know who you are and what it is you do?
So my name is Francois Naude, and I am a super teacher. And I know how arrogant that sounds. Every single time I do a public appearance, I start off with this concept and I say, I am Francois Naude and I am a super teacher. And I immediately see all the eyebrows raising. But I believe that if we are to change the face of education, if we want to change the career and the job or the way in which people view teachers, it has to start with teachers themselves. If we don't uplift our own profession and really talk about our profession as if it's something worthwhile, then things are not going to change. We can't, I firmly believe education in our country is in a crisis, and you can't just solve a crisis with mediocre people. You need superheroes. If we can delve into the geekiness of everything, I am such a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and of superheroes in general. I was asked in 2013 to do a motivational talk to a bunch of first-year teachers, and I thought, yes, how am I going to motivate them? What is it possible that I can say? And I did the typical thing of doing a PowerPoint presentation and it's almost like a YouTube little presentation, 5 things every teacher does, or the 10 things teachers should look out for when starting a profession. But I got bored with my own presentation while I was rehearsing it. And I'm like, there needs to be another way in which we can reach these students. And at the time, it was just when, it's like 2013, it's just when the Marvel Cinematic Universe was on the up. We had a few of the films releasing, and superhero culture was quite prevalent at the time. And I structured the entire talk around this thing about teachers need to be superheroes. Every single teacher can be a super teacher because we all have our unique superpowers, and we all have our unique kryptonite, if you wish. But we need to start focusing on our strengths and start collaborating. And that's why I like the Avengers movies for all of its other flaws. I like the idea of the Avengers. It's a team of people with unique skills who come together to solve a problem. And in essence, that's what I'm trying to create with my community. I'm not saying I am the super teacher. I am the only super teacher. I'm saying I'm a super teacher. And I would like to unite all of the other super teachers under one banner so that we can make a positive difference in each and every classroom.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea about why I'm having you on here, because I do see a similar vision with you and me, where we want to do things in a way that is fun and deep, but not necessarily mainstream of how it's been done, because we see the flaws. Like, you see the flaws in how education is done, and I see the flaws in how science is being communicated, and that's a different form of teaching. It's not a base level, government mandated way. It's up to us as scientists to kind of teach our science, and usually it's only you write a paper and then you get it sent to a journal, and nobody reads that journal. And like, sometimes your paper is only read by I think 50% of papers are read by only the authors that wrote them, the editors of the journal, and the reviewers that are reviewing the paper. 50% of scientific papers, and I think that's kind of ridiculous. But I do see this change happening, where science is starting to get communicated in other ways, in video, podcast form, stuff that you and me are trying to do. So let's maybe go on to that before we get into the too deep stuff. Like, so you've embraced social media for your work and your content creation. What actually inspired this during your journey?
I think something that you just mentioned really resonated with me, even a few years ago, is exactly this thing. Like, as academics, we put in a lot of work to do research, and we read the other people's papers. Especially if you're a PhD student or a master's student, you read the other papers, and you incorporate that in your study. But at the end of the day, once you've produced a publication, as you rightfully said, it's like a handful of people that ever get access to that information. And there's a lot of systemic issues around it. I mean, just the fact that you have to pay for journal access to journals already, that's a major ethical issue, I actually think. But the communication around knowledge needs to change. The way in which we, in academia or in general, try and communicate knowledge is so outdated. And that's why I like people like, if we go back to our younger days, like Bill Nye the Science Guy. That was a different way of communicating science to people, and people loved him. And nowadays, I mean, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson is everywhere in pop culture, and he's proclaiming science, and he's bringing through scientific concepts on such a accessible way. And I think that needs to be the way in which we start reaching people. The days of standing in front of a classroom with a textbook and reading from the textbook are gone. You can't be doing that. If we're wondering why there's so much discipline issues in the classroom, I think that's one of the major reasons. So what's really appealing to me, I come from a drama background and from a science background. I was part of the University of Johannesburg's Arts Center for 5 years, where I played in musicals and theater productions and stuff like that. And then also, while studying science, doing all of these at the same time. And then also in about 2013, 2014, being exposed to YouTube and other creators on YouTube, I just started realizing, imagine how cool it would be if there was a YouTube channel specifically for teachers. And that's what got me thinking about content creation. But I only started getting the guts to record my first video. I think it was in 2016 was the first time that I actually took the plunge to start a YouTube channel. And I almost want to say the rest is history. Four years later, and I've got a podcast, and I've got the YouTube channel, and I'm embracing Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and all of the platforms to communicate this thing about what is it that is a super teacher, what makes a super teacher.
That's been really cool. I've been enjoying your stuff for the past 4 or 5 years or 3-4 years, because we kind of came up together. Well, we kind of started around the same time-ish, but I went back and forth and rebranded and did all sorts of weird things, whereas you stayed on the path focused, unlike me. But I'm bringing my focus back now. But speaking about focus in academia, so you are Dr. Francois Naude, so you have a PhD just like me. What was your PhD about?
It was a very interesting process. I never thought that I would want to get a PhD. In actual fact, I was almost coerced into doing my master's degree because my supervisor at the time just said, you know what, you never have to write exams ever again. It's like you just do a research assignment. And then, so I was like, oh, okay, this sounds cool as long as I don't have to write any exams. And then completed my master's degree almost unwillingly, but I must say I'm grateful. What I did my master's degree on was on science education, specifically focusing on evolution and how it impacts Christian teachers and Christian learners, especially in a time when evolution was just brought into the curriculum. So that was what I did my master's on. But a few things happened in between. As I completed my master's, I also won the National Teachers Award for excellence in secondary school teaching in the country. And at the same time finishing my master's degree. So what happened was that the University of Johannesburg approached me and asked whether I would come and train teachers. And that was a major decision for me if I wanted to leave the classroom, because I absolutely loved interacting with the learners, with the kids and the parents. And taking me out of the classroom into a university setup is something that I always dreamt of, but not really thought that I'd actually achieve it. So here I had this opportunity to go and train other teachers, but it came with a little proviso that said that if you want to come and train teachers, you also have to do your PhD. So it's it was never a thing of, yes, I want to do my PhD. But luckily I must say, I still kept within the science education field, but then I changed my focus away from high school onto foundation phase. So our children in grade R to grade 3, they're about between 6 and 9 years old, because that's actually where we have to lay a strong scientific foundation. One of the major criticisms of society is the fact that scientific literacy is not something that's focused on. Very few people are scientifically literate. And what I wanted to investigate is, how do young children learn scientific concepts? One of the strangest things for me is that the South African curriculum doesn't focus on science in the first 3-4 years of schooling. It's a little part of the major curriculum. It's not even a full-on subject in the first three years. It's all part of the life skills curriculum, and that already the life skills curriculum is like the black sheep of the curriculum in the foundation phase, and we don't pay attention to the little bit of science that's in there. So my PhD focused on what concepts, or how do young children learn concepts in the early stages, because we believe that would then formulate a foundation for scientific literacy later on in life.
Yeah. Just thinking about that, I'm just thinking about like all my friends and all the academics I know that are in the sciences. Like, they fell in love with science not in school, like something out of school, watching documentaries or just playing in the yard, or going along with parents, camping or fishing or stuff like that. Like, none of it actually, I don't remember a story where it's like, okay, I rocked up to the science class as a kid and then I want to become a scientist. That I've never heard that story, so that kind of resonated with me, because I've wanted to be a marine biologist since I was like 8, and before that I wanted to be a paleontologist since I think I was like 5 or 6, and that wasn't anything to do with school, but I excelled at it in school because I was passionate from the reason that I wanted to be it. But I don't think school does a good job of igniting scientific curiosity in kids. It's all just, facts that you need to learn. And like, if you're not happy and if it's not fun for you, then it's just a chore, so
yeah, absolutely. And I think you're one of the lucky ones and the inspirational ones that from a young age knew that you wanted to go into a direction like this. And if I were to waver a guess or a bet, I would think that you either had a parent or a grandparent or an uncle, somebody in your family that exposed you at a young age to the field, or at least gave you books or gave you some form of introduction, and you resonated with that. Now, we don't see that with the majority of our kids. When they are young, basically from birth up until the age of 6, children are scientists. There's no two ways about it. They are inquiry. They've got hypothesis. That's how they test. They keep on playing. They engage with the natural environment. But the older they get, especially once they get to school, we almost kill the curiosity by just spoon feeding them facts, and we don't allow them the opportunity to think for themselves, to problem solve, because we are so coaching towards the exam, and that's the detriment of science. We don't have passionate science teachers. Our teachers are not scientifically literate themselves. They also don't know the science content. So it comes down to very boring factual classes. And then, of course, we sit with this issue that even in the physical sciences, everybody is afraid of the subject because you get taught from the previous generations of all the kids, it's so difficult and the teacher is so mean. And I mean, physical science has got all this mathematics in it, and people are discouraged from following those pathways, and it's extremely sad.
Yeah. I wonder, like, how much disdain for mathematics is just cultural and not actually because it's difficult. Just like, because you get told and then you kind of reinforce that idea in your head. But, mathematics is kind of like, it's the language of the universe, and if you look at it from a certain angle, a lot of it does make sense. But, the kids just get told, like, I don't like maths. I'd rather be doing something else. And then they just don't pay attention to it. So yeah,
no, definitely. Mathematics has got a bad rap because the way in which we teach mathematics is towards an exam. If you can't solve these few sums or problems, then you're going to fail your exam and you are a failure. Instead of just, young children know mathematics. You are innately born with mathematical concepts, and that then develops and grows as you get older. It's just we're not making it fun. We're not making it relevant. We're just putting it like almost in isolation on a piece of paper, and now solve for X, and you get discouraged because you don't know what X is.
Yeah, so I think we covered a lot of what you think, governments are getting wrong about education. But what do you think are the major things outside what we talked of that they're getting wrong, or what they might be getting right, but are just like not affirming it properly?
So it's a difficult thing because, number one, I want to acknowledge that I don't want to be the person making these decisions because you can't be right. I'm just thinking about the current situation, the Minister of Education having to decide to open schools under lockdown or not to open. There isn't a right answer. You will be wrong in the eyes of many, and you'll be right in the eyes of few. So even coming down to how governments develop strategies around teaching and how they design curricula, even that process is extremely cumbersome and difficult. What they're getting right, I think, if we look at the South African curriculum, at least, it's very rich in concepts. It's very rich in knowledge. What the problem is the focus on skills isn't great, and especially the focus on the affective domain. So the value systems, how it interacts with society, those type of things. It's quite lacking. Even though the curriculum makes mention of it, the enforcement of it, or the practicalities around it isn't really followed through because we've got this major focus on assessment. We have got this fascination with the grade 12 exam results.
Matric exams.
That pass rate, exactly. That pass rate is everything because it's become so politicized. And that's not where the world is going. If you just have a look at some of the major companies in the world, Facebook, Google, Tesla, all these people, they are disregarding people's qualifications when they hire. They're not looking at qualifications anymore. They want to see whether you can do the job. Come in with a portfolio of evidence. Show us, here's a problem. Can you solve the problem? We don't care whether you studied at Harvard or whether you only have a grade 4 behind your name. If you can do the job, so it becomes a meritocracy, and that I like. But the focus generally in society is still stuck in this 20th century type of schooling, trying to train kids for factory working, and that's a major flaw. But the one thing that our government is not getting right is access to education for everybody and equal access, or let's at least say equitable access to education for everybody. And this is what lockdown and the coronavirus has shown us is the vast inequalities between the schools. The way in which the department had to scramble just to get basic sanitation in schools. I mean, and that's temporary. They need to deliver water tankers at schools. That means these schools never had access to water. Just think about the type of schooling that happens in a school where you've got, let's even just give them slack and say it's 100 kids. If you've got 100 children who can't go to the bathroom, who can't wash their hands, just think about the logistics around trying to teach in a school like that. And that's bare basics, and that's something that we're getting wrong. The fact that we don't have enough schools, we don't have enough super teachers, that's a major challenge. And honestly, I can't see a way in which that problem is going to be fixed soon.
Do you think that COVID-19 will set us back in any way, or do you think maybe there might be a silver lining at the end of it for education?
For some, it's going to be a silver lining. For others, it's final nail in the coffin. It's this digital divide that's been exposed and just broadened. The people who had access to the internet and had access to teachers who had access to the internet during lockdown could continue their schooling. The people who didn't have access to the internet and didn't have access to their teachers are falling way behind in the race. And that's going to be a problem. Look, I think we're going to catch up on the missed time. I really don't think it's going to be a permanent a challenge. Of course, I mean, if you miss out on 3 months in grade 4 or grade 5, you're most likely going to catch that up in time, because a lot of us can't remember what we learned in grade 4 or grade 5 anyway.
I doubt it.
I doubt it, and even the quality of what you would have been taught in that time is also debatable. But missing out on 3 months in grade 1 and grade 2 could be quite a challenge. But I also think our kids will catch up if they get access to teachers who can remedy it. And that's the problem. I don't think we've got enough super teachers out there that would know how to deal with children that lost 3 months of schooling. Because now everybody is just going to rush and try and catch up with the content without focusing on whether the kids actually learned the concepts.
Yeah. No, for sure. I'm sure. Well, I mean, this is a new thing for everybody, this whole lockdown thing. I don't think there's really anybody who could be, fully prepared for something they never would have expected. But also, I feel like, you're right. There should be a bunch of super teachers out there who know how to adapt and to, their situation and be able to, take it try and spin it into a way that's positive, or try to actually get the work done at the end of the day. So, I doubt it, but you're working on it, so I'm pretty sure one day we'll get there.
And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. The point being, nobody knows how to deal with this, but in collaboration, by forming this unit of teachers that can learn from each other and forming these networks is extremely important, because that's how we're going to learn. As soon as one person, I almost want to say, you create this hive mind. As soon as one person in the network, if they find a solution that works for them, we need to start telling their stories. And that's what I'm so passionate about. And that's why I have the Super Teachers Unite platform, where I can assist other teachers in telling their stories, because that's going to light the spark with another teacher that's got a challenge, saying, you know what, this is something I can try in my classroom. And in that way, we just assist each other in improving.
For sure. So you mentioned earlier, that there's now digital and online methods of trying to catch up. I wouldn't technically call it online teaching. That's probably a different thing, or online education. But how do you think now the recent going ons is going to affect that, locally in South Africa or worldwide? Like, how do you think online teaching is going to change?
So remote teaching isn't new. It's something that has been done. Was just in the minority, and then suddenly with the lockdown, we had to start jumping and saying, okay, what has worked with remote teaching in the past, and how can we start scaling it to everybody? So I'm glad that happened, because one of the other inequalities that happened in schooling is we assumed that when kids are in the classroom that they're learning. Now, what would happen if a child fell ill and they were booked off and stayed home? The teacher would have just continued with their class, and then the onus was on this child to catch up on the work that they missed.
Yeah.
Now, we've been proclaiming this for so many years, is that you can't be a teacher in a classroom presenting knowledge. We've got Google for that. We've got YouTube for that. Kids can get content anywhere. With access to the internet, children don't need the teacher to be an oracle of knowledge anymore. Now, why not embrace the fact, instead of fighting against and thinking, I'm going to lose my job because platforms like Khan Academy is going to take over my role? That's not the point. Actually, you're lightening your load on the one end so that you can focus on something else. If you were to create mini lectures in transmitting knowledge. So the teachers in your audience would know about Bloom's taxonomy. It's a stratification of thinking tasks almost. So something like knowledge, gaining knowledge is a lower order cognitive skill. You can get that anywhere. You don't need a highly specialized person to assist you with that. So if you can take those tasks and you can almost automate it, you can create a YouTube video about a specific topic, and present it like you wanted to, and host it on your own YouTube channel as a teacher. And every single year, give the kids access to that video. That means you don't have to teach the same thing on repeat for, let's say you've got 9 classes of the same grade. You don't need to waste your time with that. You can assign that as almost self-study. And this is called what's called the flipped classroom. So kids then, they take their home time, if you wish, the time they would have spent doing homework, consuming this information, making their own notes and whatever. But the time you spend in the class, you spend that on the higher order cognitive tasks. Things like collaboration, problem solving, evaluation, synthesis, those type of activities you can now do in the class with the assistance of a teacher and your peers. And I think a lot more of that has happened in the last 3 months, especially with the teachers that I work with, is that they started embracing that and started to see the rewards. Because now it's no longer just teaching one subject. You are actually incorporating or integrating the different fields of schooling to match reality. And when that happens, kids see the relevance and they start learning the things that they want to learn.
For sure, I kind of see that happening, and I've seen like myself, because I did a bit of lecturing last year. Was it? Yeah, that was last year. Teaching some third-year students about aquatic ecology, and we had one session where I was just going through the knowledge information slides a bit fast. So we decided to use one lecture as just like a class discussion, and I sent out a paper to everybody, and I wrote out a bunch of questions, and we just sat in class together, like answering each of the questions with the whole class. And the class really enjoyed, this level of interactivity and problem solving and synthesis over my other lectures. So yeah, and it's fun because you get to discuss and go through things and kind of look at problems from different angles with different perspectives, and you kind of can't get that sitting by yourself and reading a textbook. You have to get that when everybody is together. But when everybody is together and you're just teaching something that you could read or just see through a video, you're kind of like wasting life, which is very short. Yeah,
exactly. And that, I mean, it's so much more fun co-creating knowledge, because that's what the real world is like. If you were to step into the profession, whatever profession you choose, you are creating new things every single day along with your colleagues. Now, the nitty-gritty, let's use another example. Let's say it's law. You can do all of the readings and the preparation you can do in your own time, but when you and your colleagues come together, that's the time where you start applying the knowledge that each of you gained in individual ways, and then coming up with a new solution. And I think there's a lot more value. If you look at universities, we basically per semester have got 14 weeks to work with our students. Why waste that time with reading slides that they could have read on their own? Rather use activities like you just said to start discussing and bringing about new knowledge.
For sure. And speaking of new ways of teaching, like what roles do you think now that these alternate ways that we are starting to discover now that we are forced to, alternate ways of teaching will take going forward in the future? Do you think we will learn and adapt? And what kind of alternate ways do you think that we will actually take on or maybe discard?
So it's difficult to predict what's going to happen, especially now that schools are opening, and globally we your northern hemisphere schools, many of them are only going to open now in August again. So it's going to be interesting to see what the innovation is that certain schools are going to do. But what I like doing is looking at almost these fringe type of methodologies or fringe type of activities that have been done in the past that can gain some popularity. And the one thing I just mentioned to you, the one example I just said, is what is called the balance between synchronous and asynchronous teaching. That's the flipped classroom or the blended approach to learning. That was quite a fringe type of activity, and that's going to become more mainstream. But one of the other activities that I really enjoy, or two of them, if I can mention, the one is project-based learning, and the other one is self-directed learning. I think there's going to be a lot more development in those fields. With project-based learning, you start off with a driving question, and it's not focused on a specific subject. So it could be anything, but you have a driving question. And then you, as a teacher, I would team up with probably 3 or 4 other colleagues from different subjects. And we would develop this roadmap of where we would like to steer the direction of learning. But we don't prescribe what is being learned. The kids, as they progress through the problem solving scenarios that we create for them, they start creating knowledge and solving problems and learning the facts as they go on, learning skills as they go on. So I think there'll be a lot of development in those directions. And the other case is self-directed learning, where children decide on their own, this is something I'm interested in. I want to discover more towards this topic than something else that they're not necessarily interested in, or that they're not relevant, or that they don't find relevant. Those two fields, I believe, is going to become stronger. And then, of course, with homeschooling, because I can see that the homeschooling is becoming more and more popular, that there would be a lot of questions answered. Because one of the things we want to know, and that's something that I'm really baffled about, is why should we have cohorts of children that are the same age in a grade? Why should all of grade 1s be 7-year-olds? Why should all of your grade 12s be 17, 18-year-old children? Why can't a child that's progressing quicker not move through the system at a quicker pace? And I think those type of, because that's the only place in your entire life that you're going to socialize with people your own age. The real world, I mean, I've got friends that are in their 50s and 60s and older, and I've got friends that are also in their 20s and in their teens. I think like the online gaming sphere has brought about this thing that you are judged on your merit. You're not judged on your age necessarily. And that's something we need to start thinking of, is why should all of our kids progress through school at the same pace when we all learn at different pace and we can start exhibiting our skills in a different way? So I think there's going to be a lot more focus on ways to fast track the trajectory of learning for certain individuals.
Indeed, I think hopefully there's going to be some changes, but I think at some point it's going to be warranted that we do get a kind of maybe diverse, you would say, way of teaching the kids. Because I agree that this factory way of this kind of like post-war type of way of teaching is just creating kids that are not necessarily fit to be in society by the time they leave school. It's more like, okay, they know a bunch of facts, okay, and they pass some tests. Like, it doesn't, what the meaning of it is starting to go away. Especially, those pieces of paper that we put too much stock into in the 90s, and now we're feeling kind of the repercussions in recent eras. But talking about,
I believe it's going to balance out, because as the current generation are going to become parents and those kids are growing up, they are going to be faster adopters of the alternative ways of education. The big focus for our generation is you have to go to university and get a degree, because that's the sign of success. Where we don't necessarily view that as the case, and that our generation's children and their children are not going to view it in the same way that our parents and society is going to do it. So there will be change, and it's going to balance out.
Yeah. And of course, we have some skin in the game, because between two of us, we probably have like 6-7 degrees. So and
exactly. And the question, what does it help me at the moment?
Not much.
Not much.
Because the world is just changing too fast. Like those certificates are starting to mean little and little as time goes on. But speaking of changing with the times, what I really want to talk to you about, I want to talk to you about everything, but like what I'm most interested in is teaching science through funky ways that you can't just do in the class. We spoke earlier about how some people get excited about science through other things. But recently, I think there's been a lot in the way of science communication in terms of gamification and putting science principles into games, into puzzles, into movies, into podcasts, into all types of media. So what are your thoughts on, the gamification of knowledge and science?
So gamification isn't something that's new or new age to teaching. I mean, when we were at school, I don't know whether you guys had a merit school, but we actually just had a demerit system, and not really just the merit system. You get assigned points for your behavior. So for every good thing you do, you get points, and then for every bad thing you do, you get points. And if you reach a certain amount of bad points, you sit detention, and then a certain other amount of points, your parents get called in and disciplinary hearings and stuff like that. That, in essence, is gamification. If there is a score awarded to something that you do, and there's a reward or a punishment attached to it, that's in essence what gamification is. So we are seeing that many schools are basically adapting their schooling to include gamification of some sort. If you really want to think about it, just the fact that you're getting marks for a test in its own sense is probably gamification. But we are seeing, if I can go back to this project-based learning approach, is that gamification can be pulled into that the different activities that the teachers are assigning the kids, that you don't necessarily fail at something, you progress, and you need a certain amount of points before you can go on to the next task type of thing. So it's never the thing that, because if you play a game, you can play the same level until you get it right.
Yeah.
And that's a very important notion when it comes to gamification of education, is you can do it if you've passed the level with all 3 your lives intact, then you go on to the next one. But if you failed the level, then we retry it, or maybe we adapt it so that there's another way for you to approach in doing that. So one way of changing the way in which we communicate about science is to build it into our assessments. I don't know whether it happened to you, but my teachers at school never asked me to create a video about anything. I always had to do a chart or a speech or
essay,
something like that. Where but the times have changed. If we want to communicate our knowledge, do it in interesting ways. I know of teachers who are asking their kids to create podcasts and having them have instead of having like a weekly homework book that they do, they do a weekly podcast to explain the knowledge that they have. So it's not just translating the knowledge that you have, but it's learning the skill of podcasting and editing and recording. So that's definitely one way. Teachers asking kids to start vlogging what they're doing using an app called Flipgrid, which is more secure. We don't want our younger kids, especially, to like use TikTok or use YouTube, because there are elements that could put them at risk. But there's a closed app like Flipgrid that educators and kids have got access to, that they basically vlog their journeys through school using the app. And that's another way of gamifying learning, because it's something relevant to the kids and they get rewarded. Whether it's if you look at for everybody using Twitch, you would know the gamification is rife on Twitch. I mean, just earning channel points and then cashing in your channel points for something. That's in essence what gamification is. And then doing that for kids in school makes it more relevant and exciting for them to learn.
And just a shameless plug here, twitch.tv/Geekoscopy. I just got affiliate on Twitch and I just got my channel points and stuff, and it was really fun setting them up because it's a game within a game. It's like a meta game, Twitch. And I like dealing in meta games because you get to like step back and look about like what's going on inside the games. But speaking about games and Twitch, do you think we can start incorporating things like educational video games and puzzles and things like that in the classroom in some meaningful manner?
Yeah, it's already happening. It's just not mainstream. Minecraft for education is a major movement. Minecraft itself as a knowledge building tool is extremely strong. I also know that they're starting to use Minecraft to teach programming and coding. And it's in essence basically grade ones can do it, because the programs that they've created basically uses the Minecraft interface and then allows kids, for instance, to move 3 blocks forward, and then they have to use like scratch coding or something similar to scratch coding to learn about how do I move my unit forward, and then there's little tasks that they need to complete using programming language. So that is already happening. I know Fortnite. There's Fortnite for education, where you can go into the world building mode of Fortnite. So it's not the Skopskiet and Donner part of Fortnite. It's the world building, and you can create and collaborate and work together on Fortnite to build a world. So there are teachers. I don't know of many South African teachers who are incorporating that. It's definitely not mainstream, but you'll start seeing these fringe activities start filtering into the mainstream with time. But we need to tell those stories, and I'm glad to say that I've got a few teachers lined up on my podcast and show that's going to explain their experience about using Minecraft in education, so that other people can learn from that and start incorporating that in their teaching.
Yeah, I'm actually keen to see what you got going, because you go deeper to the education side. I'm more on the gamer side and on the science side. But you mentioned to me that eSports is becoming interesting now in the future of education and children. How is that so?
So with lockdown, one of the major things, I don't know whether you guys are getting any rule systems, but there's no live sport on TV whatsoever. All the Super Rugby has been cancelled. People are I'm seeing these Afrikaner oomies, everybody wanting to braai and watch rugby, but they can't. And that's really getting to them, because now they need to watch the soap operas, and they need with the wives, and the wives have got control over the remote control. So that's one of the major concerns with the virus, is like what's going to happen with sport. And I can guarantee you that for the remainder of this year, schools are not going to engage in extramural activities. Very few schools are going to worry about their sporting activities and their culture activities outside of school, because everybody will be focusing on completing the content, and every single spare moment is going to be used to focus on academia, and that's not healthy, because where do our kids get their outlets? And if you want to talk about a platform that has got social distancing built into it, online gaming is there. What are our kids doing? Very few kids are really like majorly into sport, but they will spend hours upon hours playing their favorite game. Why not start incorporating that into schools' extramural activities? Why not form esports clubs at the school, especially now when they can't go and have these netball meets with other schools? Why not start incorporating online, even if it's just exhibition matches? If you play Dota 2, like have a school team that challenges another school's team. And see what happens. You can really build. Imagine what will happen if you stream that on Twitch and the entire school is pulling in as the audience and rooting for their school's team. It's a different world, and I think our teachers and the principals are not used to the world of online gaming. But our kids definitely are. They're looking up to other creators. They're looking up to streamers like Ninja, and thinking like, you know what? That's the epitome. I want to become that. So why not start giving them that platform at schools to already start building their own careers as streamers?
I think it hasn't really hit the mainstream yet, but the money in esports is ridiculous. And I think, when school governing bodies and university administrators come to realize how much money is in there, we might get some movement. But we kind of like forced. Like, you just reminded me of that meme where it's like it says like esport is not a sport, and like 2020 esport is the only sport now. Stocks. So I think definitely in South Africa we behind on that. There are esports teams, things like Allied Gaming and stuff like that. I'm not too deep into esports, but I find it fascinating, and I'm wondering like when we will catch up. And I've also been wondering like, okay, when are we going to get like university teams? And stuff like that, because the platform is like, it's so easy. Like, you don't have to build a stadium. Like, you got Twitch, it's there, it's built for you. All you have to do is like maybe design an overlay, just pay one student to do it. They can do all of this stuff. Maybe even for free, like for fun, they will just, set up your channel for you.
I promise you, like when I was at school, I loved rugby. I played a lot of rugby, cricket, hockey, chess. I was all over the field, and I really enjoyed that. But if my school had a Super Mario team, I would much rather be on that. If what was big in the time, in FIFA, if we had a FIFA team instead of just a normal soccer team, I would much rather work hard to be there. Or at least, this is one thing we're not thinking about, except for just the money. The other careers that form around esports, things like sports casting. You don't have to be great at the game to be able to be a sportscaster for your school. There could be blog writers about the school, like the old fashioned newspaper. You transform that into a website or a blog about the team. So you're already expanding on the possibilities. And I agree with you. The fact that there is a lot of money in esports will take a while before our generation and the current generation of teachers and principals catch up to the ways in which to monetize sponsorships around your school's team. But it's already something that they understand, because they're doing that with their first team rugby and with their first auto polo team. I don't know. They know how to get sponsorships. Now you just transfer that into an online modality, and you get more eyes, because people can sit in their pajamas and watch the first team play Call of Duty, for instance.
I think it's a grave missed opportunity especially well, I suppose our internet infrastructure needs a lot of work, and that's probably why we're so behind on
But I must say,
other
I've
things.
connected with Colin Webster, who is on the board for Mind Sports South Africa, and I actually have an interview with him. Actually, I'll have an interview with him because they already have. I think I'll have more information after I've spoken to him. But it started off basically as the Mind Sports, like chess, like being a chess association, but has moved into esports, and there are leagues for schools, and it exists. I just think that very few people know about it, and that's part of my job is to give a platform to these people so that other schools can get to know, there's another possibility, there's another way of doing it, and get involved with something like Mind Sports South Africa is a way to go.
Yeah, and I think that there also needs to be the removal of the stigma that you have to be this like physical athlete specimen to be involved in a sport, and I don't think that's necessarily true. But either way, it's a form of entertainment. People want to watch it. It's based on skill. Not everybody is going to be good at StarCraft 2. Let me tell you right now. Like, it's playing StarCraft 2 is like playing chess while you're falling from the sky, and like your pieces are like going all over. So like, it's a thing that is skillful. That's why people want to watch it, because you want to see what the high level of these games, how they operate, because probably you can't do it, or you want to learn how to do it going forward. So, and I do think that stigma is going away. There were all these stories, I think when ESPN started having, I think Street Fighter or Evo on their channel, there was this whole uproar about how like esports is not a sport. But I think right now, esports was the only sport for the past few months. So
exactly, and give it a few years until it really becomes mainstream and people start seeing the prize money that gets paid to it, and then you'll start seeing people moving.
Indeed. So let's go back to teaching methods. What's some of the wackiest, like just crazy teaching methods that you might have seen or heard of during your studies?
That's an extremely difficult question. When I think of wacky ways of teaching, I immediately think of these teachers that are just like reading out of their textbook, because I can't believe that people are still doing that. And that's even if they rock up to classroom. So it's a very difficult question to answer. What I can say is that I'm seeing a lot of teachers embracing new ways of teaching. I think the most almost want to say the most innovative teaching methodologies I've seen in the last while is this emergence of what is called the Bitmoji classroom. So people are creating their avatars on Bitmoji, and then transferring that onto a PDF document. So you use Google Slides, and then you put in little icons of books or whatever, and you create a PDF with hyperlinks in it. And the hyperlinks take you to the different resources. So if we were talking about the flipped classroom, where the kids have to consume the content before they go to the classroom, the teacher can compile a specific Bitmoji classroom or Bitmoji activity for the kids. If I can give you an example from marine biology, for instance, if you are teaching food chains, you can actually create a Google slide where we put Dr. Janas as the teacher in the slide at an estuary, for instance, and you would have the different links in the food chain. And every organism would be clickable. So if you click on it, it takes you to information video about, let's say, for instance, plankton, and it takes you to plankton and what plankton is, and the entire like information biography of plankton. And then you can see, okay, well, there's an arrow that shows that the energy is transferred onto, shrimp. And then you have to correct me here, because my biology might be very rusty. But for instance, then the shrimp is the next one, because they eat the plankton. And then you then have a link that takes you to a video or a blog or an article. And that all is then on a very like data inexpensive document, because it's basically a clickable PDF, which is then sent to the kids. It's so creative, it's visual, and then it links to other modes of teaching. And I'm really loving the teachers that are using their creativity, because the next lesson you can move away from an estuary, you can be back in a lab, and you can maybe teach the Kirby Bauer technique using a PDF document. So that's very interesting, and I'm really excited for that. That's the one, and the other one, this is very fringe and new. I can't remember the school's name again, but it's I think it's in Minnesota in America. It's a community school. In other words, the parents typically are work from home parents, so they don't spend a lot of time at the office. So the parents are actually in the school, the kids are in the school, and then the principal and the teachers are there. But then the teaching is like almost a community activity, where the teachers and the parents and the kids are all in the same classroom working on the same activities. And sometimes if the parents have got challenges at work, then the kids and the teachers assist with solving that. And then the parents assist the kids again with. So that's like a very, very like fringe type of schooling or teaching that I think is very, very interesting.
No, that's pretty cool. I'm actually thinking of like how I would incorporate that into my content. Or maybe even I was also thinking about like D&D. Like if I wanted to make like a PDF to for another dungeon master that kind of sends them off to different online resources, it might be something cool.
Now you're talking, because there's I mean, scavenger hunts. You can have multiple of these PDF documents linking to each other, so you can create scavenger hunts. Or if you want to do a quest for D&D, it's definitely something that you can do in an online modality.
Do you play some D&D? Sounds like you know about it.
I know about D&D. I'm not. I can't for one moment say like I'm a massive fan, because I don't know enough about it. But the little bit that I know about D&D, I promise you, if I start playing, I'm not going to stop. So I know my personality. I get hooked on fantasy games like this. And if I can co-create the story, I'll never stop playing D&D. So maybe I should join a novice group and see how it goes.
Yeah. Maybe start off as a player. I mean, it was the same for me. Once I got into D&D, I fell deep. I'm kind of like on a hiatus now because I got burnt out last year, DMing too many groups in 1 week. Guys, you should probably max out at 2, like 2 max. Don't go to 3. It'll probably kill you.
Well, I'm putting myself out there that if you want to start and you want an apprentice, I'm willing to be your Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing something D&D on my Twitch channel. I've got a rough idea, but I'll definitely invite you to come on, and then we can maybe have like a teaching themed D&D game somehow. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up for the questions. What I would like to ask from you is, obviously not a lot of teachers are going to be watching the show. This show is about geek culture and science kind of coming together. But in that state of mind, I think just being a human being, you're always trying to convey some bit of information or concept to another person in some way, because we all have different perspectives. We all have different knowledges, different upbringings, different cultures that we might need to explain, to come together. So what do you think would be your top 5, let's say, tips that you would think about if you're trying to convey information to somebody else and they might not be getting it the first time or the second time? What would you try?
Well, the first thing would be to listen. I think people try and talk too much. Let's first determine what it is that the person already knows, because without determining where they are on their conceptual journey, it makes it extremely difficult. And that's one thing teachers don't do often enough. We just jump in and assume everybody is up to a certain level, and then we keep on teaching from there. So tip number 1 would be first listen and ask a few questions, because in raising questions, you get to know what the other person's conceptual framework is like. Without knowing their background, the previous exposure they had to whatever you're trying to teach them, it's impossible to start teaching. So there's this quote, and I can't remember it like verbatim or even who said it, and probably it's Albert Einstein, but everybody attributes every single quote on the internet to Albert Einstein. So I'm not even going to venture that far. But it's basically that if you can't explain a concept to a 7-year-old, it means you don't understand the concept well enough yourself. So if you're starting off teaching something to somebody, don't start off with major language and make it very complicated. Try and distill it down to its essence, and try and explain it in that way. But you have to understand the person that you are teaching to. Be in a dialogue with that person, and then try and use language that individual would understand. Use analogies. For if I can use an example from our discussion when I made the example of the Bitmoji classroom, taking it into marine ecology is something that you would understand. So if I can be a little bit nerdy here, it's called the zone of proximal development. A philosopher, a psychologist with the name of Lev Vygotsky spoke about this, is that you have to create the zone where you stretch out your hand to the other person and they stretch out their hand to you, and you meet halfway. And in that meeting, you start pulling them closer to your side. And pulling them into the zone of learning. So that would be my initial thing is, number one, listen to them, get to know what they know about the concept, and then start introducing the new concepts with analogies and stories that person really is already familiar with.
What other tips do you have?
So I think that's like the major thing. And then the second, be passionate about what you teach, because we learn from people not only in what they say, but it's in how they say it and how they portray their body language. If you include yourself when you teach, that's very important. You absolutely have to tell stories that's relevant to you, things that make you come alive, that you are interested in, because we are interested in interesting people. When you are interesting, other people find a lot of value from that. So don't shy away and try and teach like somebody else would teach it. Teach it like you want to teach it, because that's the key. We've got thousands of teachers, everybody teaching the same content, but it's the way in which you teach it that resonates with different people. And that's why I'm not in favor of, for instance, teaching the same class from grade 8 to grade 12. You need to give people exposure to other ways of learning. So give diverse ways in which you would teach a concept. Don't stick to the same old way in which you would have taught. You have to really contextualize it for the individual. That's why classroom teaching is so extremely difficult. If you've got 40 kids, all of them are unique, and it's so difficult to bring through a concept to them if you don't know all 40 of them.
For sure. Maybe one more big tip.
So this is difficult. You're putting me on a spot here.
Okay, let's take it away from maybe teaching to just communication, human to human. Like, what could we do to get better?
Take away friction. Like, don't communicate with somebody on a platform that they don't want to be communicated on. When last did you actually answer your phone when somebody phoned you? I don't. I despise it when people phone me. Like, don't phone me. Don't assume that I've got time to answer your phone call, because 90% of the time, if I answer the call, it's a robocall or some call center wanting to sell something to me. So advertisers have spoiled that platform. Don't talk to me or don't communicate with me on a platform that I'm not on. If you want to reach me, you do it via voice note on WhatsApp. I respond much quicker than even if you try to email me. So once again, get to know the way in which the recipient of your communication, how they would want to hear from you. And that's why, from a content creator's point of view, we create content on different platforms and in different modalities, because we know the person that's on Twitch isn't necessarily on Facebook. And the person that's on TikTok isn't necessarily on Instagram. That's why your messaging changes for the platforms that you try and communicate on. But the essence and the message that you're trying to communicate remains the same. You're just doing it contextually for the platform that person wants to receive the communication on.
Yeah, and that's a big part of this channel, trying to convey information in different and fun ways. But I think, and with that, it's time to just pack up this little camp of ours and head back to our labs and our fantasy worlds. But first, Francois, why don't you let our fellow explorers know where they can find you and your work on the internet?
Oh, thank you. No, it's great. If people want to consume my content, the education-related content, they can have a look at Super Teachers Unite. That they can just Google that. You'll find it on YouTube. You'll find it on Facebook, as well as on your favorite podcasting platform. You'll find that. So that's Super Teachers Unite. And if you'd like to follow me on the other platforms, I'm at super_teacher_F on all of the other platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, where I keep on talking about education, basically like the micro content about education I share on those platforms.
And thank you so much for doing that, and thank you for joining me on this this little podcast of mine that's just starting up. It's been a really fun conversation. I think the two of us could probably go for another 3 hours if we wanted to, but let's just keep it to 1 hour for now. We certainly didn't hit on a few things, we talked about before we actually started up the podcast. But, we can always bring it back another day. So thanks for joining me, Francois. And thank you, listener, for sparing your time. And I hope you did have a nice little fun learning session with us today. Otherwise, stay safe, stay tuned, and cheers.